The Lost Leon Trotsky events. Deep in the files of Hearts of Iron 4, you can find many unused things, and some of these hint at potential other alternative ends for Trotsky. The first event, News 41, tells how he met his fate in Argentina at the hands of a Portuguese operative, which is confusing considering, as far as I know, Trotsky never even visited Argentina. So what he is doing there is beyond me. The second, News 39, tells us how he was caught on the Iranian border and taken out. But this begs the question, what on earth were these meant to be used for? For the first one, I think there is two potential options as to why it exists. The first one is that whoever made it simply got confused as to where Trotsky ended up and who took him out, which doesn't seem impossible, as the event does reference mountaineering equipment, which I believe was used in the real event. The other possibility is that if you failed to catch him in Mexico, he would flee to Argentina and you would have to deal with him there. What supports this is that the event for his death in Mexico is News 37, suggesting this would only happen if that happened first. The one where he is captured on the Soviet border is a little tricky, but I think I understand it. In the original Soviet focus tree, Trotsky's coup would only fire if you didn't do the Great Purge, but since the event talks about the recent turmoil in the USSR, guess in this version you would have to do the Purge and get the event right to get him to return. Why the death? Maybe it was intended as a point of no return. If you accepted, the coup would begin, but if not, he would fail at the last hurdle. Next up, a HOI4 exploit mystery. Who invented port strats? At this point I reckon port strats are one of HOI4's most powerful active exploits, but the question of who discovered and popularized it is an open one. Let's look at the candidates. First up, Bubbles Zest. No really, it's very possible that I am the originator of this strat. The earliest I can recall using them is April 2023 for my video, How Habsburg Poland Can Break No More Partitions. I used it there to make taking out the Germans and the Soviets a complete breeze, but I don't recall where the idea came from. Normally when I get an idea, regardless of where it comes from, I usually remember it, but not this time. Second up, Bittersteel. I can tell you straight up that he didn't create the strat, but he does offer an interesting point. On July 21st, 2023, I uploaded my Byzantium Made Simple run, which does use port strats, and the next day he uploaded a video forming Byzantium where he also uses a form of port strats. I can tell you this was a coincidence that neither of us expected, but it's clear he knew of the strat before then. And I will say it's more likely you've heard of it from him than me. His video has 577,000 views. However, did he learn it from my Poland video? Possibly, but it's entirely possible that, thirdly, someone else. I don't watch absolutely every video that's uploaded to the HOI4 space, so I don't know if someone else had already done it. It's entirely possible that someone like Torio or Feedback had already shown off the exploit and I was simply subconsciously copying them. I reckon I have done this before and it wouldn't surprise me if it happened again. So let me know, is there any proof of this exploit pre-April 22nd, 2023, that it's probable that I saw? I'd like to know, as Bittersteel recently did another run of Byzantium where he said he was following my guide, which I guess he was, but it does feel weird saying port strats are my strats when I have no idea who made them. Straight from obscurity, it's Victor Bay, nope, I'm not going to pronounce this right. From what I know, this guy's portrait has been completely unused ever since HOI4 released back in 2016, and I actually attempted to get an answer to this previously, when I asked HOI4's former lead dev as to why he was in the game. Unfortunately, it's been so long he couldn't remember, so that allows us to speculate. The most likely explanation is back when HOI4 was being developed, someone at Paradox HQ googled Russian fascist leader and he was the first result that they got, and so they made a portrait for him, before ultimately realising that Konstantin Rozaevsky would make for a much better leader and the game released with him instead. which isn't unfair. According to the few articles I could find on him, Victor apparently was not a leader, domineering and authoritative, which is probably not what you want. And when you learn Constantine was the general secretary of the Russian Fascist Party, it makes the switch obvious. However, you'd think when NSB came out 5 years later they would have found a place for Victor, especially since how little the fascist path actually has to do. But yet again, Paradox couldn't find a place for him in vanilla HOI4. If you force me to wonder why, I'd say since No Step Back was rushed anyway, they never considered him. There really isn't any proof of Paradox considering him for anything. Same former lead dev didn't even answer my question relating to NSB, which, to be fair, he left HOI4's development team during its development, so it's possible he didn't make that decision. But it does say a lot. Coming from the depths of the Nile, why Egypt wasn't in Graveyard of Empires. Right before GOE released, I said this. You know what would be perfect? Since we know the next DLC is going to include Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan and the Raj, just make them a starting nation, and you can add that to the selling points of the DLC, you know? So what happened? Well, Paradox didn't add Egypt as a starting nation, but how is that a mystery? Well, as Reddit user Shadow0304 discovered, they actually intended to do so. However, they hashed it out so they would not appear. But it seems like they were going to appear in the 1936 start date as another dominion of the British Empire, which is a bit more historically accurate. I know depicting Egypt's status at this time is kind of difficult, but close enough. But why though? Why did they do this? I don't think they were intended to get a focus tree. I think they were meant to interact with one of the GOE focus trees, probably Iraq's. Considering they can form the United Arab Republic, which in real life is something Egypt did actually create, and is still kind of the name of the nation, the Arab Republic of Egypt, it makes sense if they were included in that. However, we know GOE's development was an utter disaster, and Egypt was seemingly a casualty of that. But I don't just think that a messy development can explain everything. What I believe happened was that Paradox was unable to fix a long-standing issue with Egypt. That being, if they exist, the UK abandons the Suez and it falls too easily. Which is ironic. In GDR, they added modifiers to make the UK defend itself better. Them being unable to do it here would be shocking. But at least we got a focus tree for the East India Company. Yay! Right, back to Europe for this one, and it's another really old event, Preparing the Ground. This event, Germany 74, seems to be a cut beginning of the Anschluss. It directly states they will be sending an agent on an espionage mission to begin the process of annexing Austria. And no, it's not a La Resistance event. All of those include LAR after the event name. It's a base game event. So, what is it? As far as I know, Anschluss has always been a focus you have to complete, but this almost reminds me of EU4. And we know HOI4 started out development as basically a glorified EU4 mod, and you can see in this 2014 video of HOI4 that focus trees don't even exist. What they actually have is something called national goals, which is stated to be similar to EU4.
And we have a bunch of goals you can select here, which is a new feature called national goals. And it's a little bit like missions mixed with decisions, I guess. And they're there to kind of guide you through history a bit and also kind of give you new angles. So what they do is kind of boost your military power when you manage to fulfill one of these. And that will increase your political power, and you can use political power for all sorts of interesting stuff, like...
So, I reckon this is a remnant of that period of HOI4's development. It seems like at this point HOI4 was based much more around events instead of what we know now with focus trees. And this specific one would be the beginning of maybe an event chain for Anschluss. You send over your agent, maybe reach some other prerequisite, and only after you've finished everything you could enact the Anschluss, like it shows in the video. Since we're on the subject, there is also another Germany event from this time, the Polish Question or Germany 58. I think it's the same thing, but I think this was cut as Paradox wanted to be Danzig or War to be the World War II starter. Probably so Poland had a way out if they wanted to. Also, it has nothing to do with the Czech focus of the same name. It's just a reused name. From the Isle of Sheppey, where did Rod Hull go? This is an Easter egg that used to be well known by the HOI4 community, but has largely faded because of one simple change. Originally, when Australia went non-aligned, not only would their name be the Emu Empire, but their leader would always be Rod Hull, with his emu, coincidentally called Emu, by his side. But nowadays, if Australia flips NA, their leader will actually be L. Page. It's unusual for HOI4 Easter eggs to be removed like this, so what happened? There's several potential answers. The first one is copyright, whether that's Rod's family, the network, or both. Plenty of people would be well within their rights to enforce their copyright on his appearance in HOI4. And on the other side of the coin is the kind of game HOI4 actually is. We don't know Hull's views on violence and conflict, but if he was against them, then his use in this game is inappropriate. Another reason could be, unfortunately, me. In late 2021 I made the second part of the Exploring HOI4 series, which includes talking about L. Page's then unused portrait, and shortly after, Page's portrait replaced Hull's as the master of the Emu Empire. However, there is a caveat to that. Around the same time, Paradox introduced the character system to HOI4, allowing you to use the same character for multiple roles. And as the comment on that video says, Hull's portrait is actually overriding Page's. Maybe the person who put Page's portrait in there didn't know about that when doing the character system. So I would say it's a possible combination of all three. It's possible Rod's family reached out and asked him to be removed from HOI4. It's possible my video influenced Paradox to change him. And it's also possible that when they added the character system, they decided to take the time to change him to a much more fitting portrait. The big one from No Step Back. What happened to democratic Russia? We learnt before this DLC dropped that the Soviets would not be getting a democratic path, and I've been making them democratic ever since. However, there is plenty of evidence in HOI4 itself that a democratic path was 100% planned. From the beginning we've known about Vsevolod Ioanovich's portrait, but that's not evidence enough for a democratic path. What is, however, is the hashed out focuses that Reddit user TSS Cool Rule discovered. First up, there is a constitutional monarchy, which seems interesting. Most importantly, however, is the focus the Zobor's choice, which adds Vsevolod as a character to the Soviet Union, which directly follows the last focus, and that puts any doubt to rest. No Step Back was 100% going to have a democratic monarchy path with Vsevolod as the figurehead, but Paradox never finished it. And it's no surprise, this is the update that did the supply system, Poland's massive tree, and much more. Someone was going to draw the short straw. However, what to this day makes having no democratic Russia path ridiculous is what Paradox did with Poland's monarchist focus tree. Originally, when it was revealed, there was no Habsburg path. But the outcry was so great that Paradox immediately folded and added one pretty much the next week. And on top of that, the devs straight up lied when revealing this to the public. They claimed that they were going to spend their time making the most detailed and comprehensive tree possible, and that's why there was no democratic path, but they clearly tried to make one. I would have respected it a lot more if they outright said they weren't allowed to delay the DLC further, so the democratic path had to go. And I guess that's the real mystery. Why the devs didn't just tell the truth. Come on, at least let us use the democratic reformer to flip. It's been 4 years, guys. I've been wondering this ever since 2022. was exploiting the BBA peace deals ever intended. Originally, when BBA dropped, I made videos on the UK and Soviets covering the chaos that can happen thanks to the then new peace deals. 2 or more USSRs, annexing the entire Commonwealth as the UK. But I did most of these with the idea that this was a bug and Paradox was going to fix it soon, and so I had to hurry. But here we are, years later, and all of these pretty much still exist in the game, and Paradox hasn't really fixed them. They have modified the peace deals, but that's not the same thing as fixing them. So what gives? I believe these were genuine bugs. At first, the devs would have never put these in the game intentionally. Some of these are game breaking or downright OP, but now they have become attached to the game, and Paradox has little incentive to fix them. People like the Fast Imperial Federation strat. It's practically the fascist UK's meta. The multiple Soviet unions doesn't really happen anymore without player intervention, and most other issues with the peace deals can be dealt with by minor patches. Keeping them as they are is the better option for them. I guess it's a classic case of happy little accidents, like the spy in Team Fortress 2 that originally started out as a bug in Quake. Sometimes you just get something unexpected handed to you, and you just roll with it and it turns out for the better. And do I want some of these to be fixed? Nah, but there is still a part of me that is really confused why they haven't been fixed after so long. Originally thought of this for a potential unpopular opinions free, but oh well. What is responsible for HOI4's longevity? Mods or YouTube? It's a debate I see many times and it's very mod-sided, to be honest. The sentiment is that HOI4 would have died without mods existing, and I just cannot agree with that. Yeah, early HOI4 wasn't the best game, but if the game was truly that bad, I think it would have died off before mods could have made it popular. Vanilla HOI4 is not as bad as you want it to be. Just expecting devs who work for a living to keep up with people with infinite time is a little silly. Mods are undeniably a part of this game's replayability and infinite customization, but they are only a part of the puzzle. Let's not forget, HOI3 had mods. Kaiserreich got its start as a HOI2 mod. If mods made HOI4 popular, why didn't it do it for these games? Simple. Videos did exist for these games, but the viewership for the HOI series was always niche. But then HOI4 YouTube exploded, with people like ISP, Drew and Alex. And obviously they did play mods, and that is a part of what made them big. But there were other things. Memes like artillery only. Big personalities like the Bokoing crew, the popularity of alternative history growing massively around the same time, which HOI4 clearly benefited from and somewhat caused. Think about it. Where did you learn of most of these mods? Their workshop pages? Their discords? Yeah, I'm sure some of you did. But I know for most of you it's actually from learning about them from YouTube videos. Maybe it's the endless horde of Road to 56 fans insisting you play their mod, many people's unusual obsessions with super event videos, or even someone struggling to reunite Italy. YouTube gave mods tons of free advertising, and it shows. The two are joined together. Mods couldn't have done it alone. But YouTube needed a boost during some of the most bare-bone periods of HOI4 history. And to bring us to an even 10, what was GDR's real name? Whenever a new DLC is added, the devs normally put them in a way that finding the new content is easy, even in the game files. Every GOE model is in the GOE file. Every DoD event is marked by a DoD in the folder, and every NSB portrait is in the NSB DLC folder, and so on and so forth. But GDR breaks that trend. Its names in the files is WUW, which has nothing to do with Twilight of the Gods. So what's its actual name? It's Wonder Weapons. It's obviously Wonder Weapons. I wanted a nice obvious one, and here we are. Paradox couldn't sell a DLC called Wonder Weapons. Fairly certain that would get the DLC banned in Germany. but it is funny. As far as I remember, this is the only DLC to get even a semi-public name change like this. But that, as we say, is that. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I really liked making this. It was so fun, it went so well. So until next time everybody, I thank you for watching, I do hope you've enjoyed it, and until we meet again, from me, Bubbles Zest. Goodbye.